My mother-in-law is furious that we won't tell her I'm pregnant, even though she only dreamt about my pregnancy. My husband and I have been trying to have a baby for over a year. I've had 3 miscarriages all at or before 6 weeks. When we told my mother-in-law, she said, in a phone call, after I explained we were heartbroken, I don't think my son is that broken up about it. Why are you even sad? Most people wouldn't have known they were pregnant at 6 weeks. So to say I don't want to tell her much about my fertility is an understatement. We didn't tell her about the last 2 miscarriages for obvious reasons. Fast forward a little bit. Mother-in-law had a dream that I was pregnant a while ago. Apparently the last time she had a dream like that it was her first grandchild. So I'm a little unnerved and nervous at the same time. She asks, non-stop, are you pregnant? You're going to tell me you're pregnant, right? The problem is that her dream was right. 2 weeks later I turned out to be pregnant. Fast forward to now. I'm graduating college in a few weeks and am having a graduation party. I invited everyone in my husband's family except my brother-in-law, father-in-law, and mother-in-law. This is because my brother-in-law tried to lay hands on me because I told him he couldn't come upstairs to my and my husband's floor without calling or texting us because he's seen me unclothed and almost walked in on us having intimacy a few times. Frankly, it happened so much that it seemed intentional. When I confronted him in front of my father-in-law, brother-in-law swung at me and called me a beach. Father-in-law did nothing but say don't call her a beach. He didn't try to stop him from hurting me because it'd be an assault on an adult and I could get arrested. Fantastic. I have complex regional pain syndrome which makes the right side of my body weak, so I thought I was going to die. My mother-in-law and father-in-law said I deserved to be swung at and that I shouldn't have said no because brother-in-law has bipolar disorder. Another reason is that they have used my PTSD triggers against me many times. Told me they were glad I miscarried 3 times so they wouldn't have to take care of it, and asked me why was I so sad that I miscarried? My husband and I bought our own house in September, so we aren't around them anymore and have gone into low contact with them. We tried before we moved to get them to understand what they did was wrong, but they doubled down instead. Now on to my husband's grandfather. He emailed me that he knows my mother-in-law and father-in-law didn't get an invitation and that I should bury the hatchet and correct this oversight because he's dealt with this before and I should so love. So I called him to explain all that was above because we had been holding off on telling him. I told him frankly, I am terrified to be around them. He said I need to be the bigger person. He said that he accepts my reasoning, but I really need to think on this and not drive them away. This is because of how he had to deal with his wife's parents and they didn't talk for 6 months. They made me out to be a horrible person and that I should go away forever. I almost did, and none of my reasoning is good enough for him. I don't feel like he really understands and wants me to just suck it up, even though I have so many nightmares about this. I really miss my husband's grandmother because she would get it and she understood my triggers. She was the only one in his family that understood and accepted me. My mother-in-law is furious that we won't tell her I'm pregnant, even though she only dreamt about my pregnancy. I finally graduated and only my grandfather-in-law showed up. Mother-in-law is trying to make amends with me a bit, but it still hurts to be around her. Father-in-law demanded an invitation from my husband, but he had a spine, thankfully. On to the better news, my husband and I found out we're pregnant again after 2 rounds of UI. I found out the week of final classes, because my child is as dramatic as me. My husband and I are giving mother-in-law one more chance to get her crap together and get to know me as a person and not just as her son's wife that she hates being around. It's going okay. Sister-in-law in the other state is telling off my husband already for eating my food or not getting me the things I ask for. I love her. My father-in-law and brother-in-law are completely cut off by me. I have now told grandfather-in-law and mother-in-law that I and the baby will not be around them as to not stress me out with the baby. I made something up about PTSD panic attacks having an increase of miscarriages. Frankly, the stress probably does. Husband told father-in-law and brother-in-law that I won't be around but hasn't worked up the courage to tell them they will not have any connection to the baby. I am not going to let them treat my kid horribly. We're also conveying that if anyone decides they want to break our boundaries, they get no contact with the baby too. My husband is growing a strong spine by being so protective of me and the baby. He doesn't want the baby messed up and is really starting to be good and loyal. I do still have to remind him that we have to be of the same kind, so no saying, well, at some point I'd like father-in-law to meet the baby to his mom. Edit. It has been a month or so and it turns out my PTSD just boils down to hurt feelings. At least that's what my husband's family tells me. As I sit here 22 weeks pregnant with my PTSD worse because of it and with no meds because the baby can't have those meds, I feel like no one cares about what I went through. It doesn't matter that I somehow got the courage to go to the first family event in months. All that matters is that I sat at the kitchen island, away from the main table, with my husband and brother-in-law because there was no other seating. Because of this I didn't turn around to talk to the table, nor did my husband and brother-in-law, because we were eating. My sister-in-law's husband took it upon himself to tell my husband and I that I could at least converse with them. 1. I had just been talking with other cousins and his son. 2. They stayed very close to father-in-law and I already felt like I was dying. Sister-in-law's husband told me, I know there are hurt feelings but you have to make an effort. These are my reasons for hurt feelings, why I'm traumatized by father-in-law. He used my CPTSD and CRPS against me to win arguments on at least 3 separate occasions, even when being told not to before, during, or after. He said he was glad I miscarried because then he wouldn't have to take care of the kid. He acted like I was a child that needed to obey him. Talked down to me. My husband and I are trying to come up with ways for him to talk to his family because they've gone too far with denying my PTSD this time. After I told my husband I wished to just step out in traffic, he had enough. It also was the vivid stillbirth nightmares and the uncontrollable panic attacks yesterday. Update 2. My mother-in-law is furious that we won't tell her I'm pregnant, even though she only dreamt about my pregnancy. I'm 38 weeks pregnant and my mother-in-law just won't stop. My husband's sister has been trying to help me and telling me that the whole family is here for us, but it just doesn't seem like it. I'll give you some examples of what mother-in-law has done. I scheduled an induction for 39 weeks because my baby will kick or sit on my womanhood nerve, causing me to pass out without warning several times. They also like to sit on my CRPS nerves, causing my leg to either go limp, numb, or feel like it's being ripped apart by a lion. I told mother-in-law the date and she started questioning me and making me feel guilty for doing an induction. When I try to involve her in stuff, it has to be her way. Not what's most helpful for me or my husband. I said I needed help meal prepping after Costco. She said she could only help by helping me make the grocery list for Costco. Mother-in-law has demanded a list of things to help me after my husband goes back to work. I've said I'll try, but I have no brain cells and she acts like I'm pushing her out. Like if she was actually going to be helpful and do as asked, I would, but good lord. She talked to my husband and I separately and together multiple times after being told no, about how we need to rehome our dog because he was a stray and is still being trained. The dog is fine, he doesn't hurt anyone, and I've had dogs around babies and kids and grew up with several and trained them. Any kind of opinion she has must be followed with, well, that's just my opinion and I made it known, so I won't say it again. Then we'll tell you it again the next 3 times you see her. She says I start things, my husband is just defending me, setting a boundary for me, or saying no for me. This list is just stuff she's done in the past 2 months. I'm just fully done with her. She doesn't listen to my husband and I'm just trying to not start fights. Edit. I had the baby and we are home. Safe and sound. He was born by a C-section Saturday and had to stay in the ICU for a few days. It was all very painful and traumatic for me. The baby came out gray and was touch and go all night, and I could only have my husband go and video call from the ICU to see him. Mother-in-law didn't visit at all in the hospital. Which I thought was odd, but I attributed it to no one except my husband and I could see the baby. I kept asking when his mom should come over to see the baby since we were going home, and husband said he'd figure it out or he's thinking about it. I told him I was going to just text his mom to come over and he said don't. Like very sternly. Last night I got it out of him. Turns out, she had taken my husband out to breakfast the morning after I got myself ready to see the baby for the first time. While at breakfast they were talking about how the baby was doing and when she would meet the baby and such. Mother-in-law has decided she isn't going to meet the baby without father-in-law, who she is divorced from and is a PTSD trigger for me. Father-in-law has been banned from being around the baby until I am comfortable being around him. My husband put his foot down hard. He also didn't want to tell me as I have already been so emotionally out of whack and he didn't want to make it worse. So now we're having other family members meet him and she isn't. She's dying on this hill, y'all.